I showed up to Seabrook Shores with sand already in my shoes and hope buzzing under my skin, the kind that makes you walk a little faster than your bones prefer. 3 cottages in a row, white trim and blue doors, stood like postcards. Caleb's SUV rolled to the curb, doors popping open, voices overlapping, "Grab the cooler, where's the sunscreen?" And then everyone moved in a neat current toward the main gate. I lagged a step to free my tote strap from the suitcase wheel. When I looked up, the gate had already clicked shut on a code I hadn't been given. It wasn't loud, that sound just a practical little beep and a latch, yet it made my heart feel like a grocery bag pulled too thin. I stood there with my suitcase, handle warm in my palm, and the ocean wind tugging at my cardigan, watching my family disappear around the hydrangeas without a backward glance. I told myself not to make it a thing. They were excited. People forget themselves when the air smells like salt and sunscreen. I smoothed my shirt and smiled at a teenager walking his lab. He nodded like I belonged. My phone buzzed. A notification slid over the lock screen, adults only, a name I didn't recognize because I wasn't in the thread. Under it, a preview line. "Let her rest, we've got it." I stared at those 5 words until they doubled. Rest. As if I needed to be handled like a fragile package. I thumbed away the notification and tried the gate intercom. It crackled, then nothing. I could see Mia through the cottage window gesturing with a roll of paper towels as if she were leading a team meeting. The door opened for a delivery guy. It didn't open for me. A gull screamed overhead. I laughed out loud, the way you do when you're deciding between crying and not. The handle of my suitcase squeaked, a ridiculous little mouse of a sound, and I wished I'd greased it like the YouTube video said. I shifted my tote and my keys knocked together, the tiny metal lighthouse tapping the house key. Ting, ting. It used to be our joke, mine and my husband's, how the lighthouse would always get us home in a storm. I held the keychain tight enough to leave an imprint of its ridges on my fingers. "Hey, Mom!" Ruby's voice cut across the breeze. She jogged back from the walkway, cheeks pink, hair in a messy bun that looked deliberate. She pushed the gate for me from the inside, easy as if the code were nothing, just 4 numbers everyone already knew. "Didn't they give you the text?" she asked. When I shook my head, she winced and made a small sound, the kind teenagers use when they've seen something they can't unsee but they're not senior enough to fix it. She took my suitcase without comment, which I appreciated more than I said. Inside the courtyard, it smelled like lemon cleaner and wet rope. Mia crossed to us with a smile that skimmed the surface. "We figured we'd get everyone settled," she said. "You should rest after the drive." "I'm fine," I told her, and I meant it. My legs were steady. The part of me that always volunteered and always stayed late was steady too. Steady the way a locked door is steady. Caleb popped out of the main cottage, his voice bright with host energy. "Mom, you made it. Perfect timing. Just toss your things in the side cottage, okay? We set that one aside so you can have quiet." Quiet. The word fluttered like a napkin no one remembered to weigh down. I walked the flagstone path to the side cottage and saw the towel bundles stacked on the bed, the Welcome Hart family sign leaning against a wall. The welcome was spelled right and still felt a degree off, like when a cashier calls you "ma'am" and you're not sure if it's courtesy or distance. I stood there long enough to hear their voices merge and thin, like the tide pulling out. I put my tote on the table and took out the folder. Ethan from Seabrook Shores had mailed me weeks ago the rental agreement with my name on every page, the printed receipt, the guest list I'd filled out. I flipped to the first page and there it was in neat type. Primary renter, Eleanor Hart. I traced the words with my finger as if they might smudge. From outside, somebody yelled for the cooler. Ice clanked. A bottle cap pinged across stone. My phone buzzed again. A second preview from adults only flashed just long enough to read. Codes, after check-in. I didn't tap it open. I didn't need to. I just stood there with the lighthouse pressing into my palm and a ridiculous little sentence sliding into my head like a marble finding its groove. If I'm the one who paid, why don't I have the code? Back when this all sounded like a warm idea and not a weather system, Caleb called me on a Sunday night while I was portioning muffin batter into little paper cups. He had the voice he uses when he wants something to feel like my idea, bright, affectionate, just enough nostalgia to make your chest loosen. "Mom, what if we do a real family week? Ocean air, no obligations, just us." I found this place in Seabrook 3 cottages in a row. Can you believe the luck? I could believe it because I wanted to. It's embarrassing to admit at my age, but the thought of everyone under one skyline again made me giddy. He said he'd send me the link, that it was easier if one person handled the booking and he'd settle up once we were there, which sounded reasonable enough at the time. I said yes before logic had a chance to put on its shoes. The link arrived with pretty photos and a tidy rate sheet. Seabrook Shores offered a family compound discount if you booked the trio blue doors, white trim, shared courtyard. There was a deposit now. Then the balance 2 weeks before check-in. I did the quick math that never feels quick enough. I tightened the grocery list. I picked up an extra night at the bakery. I started a little side hustle of cinnamon rolls on Saturday mornings in the church parking lot cash box, exact change, the works. I even took my wedding bracelet to Mr. Dua, Haley's shop, the one with the tarnished bell that clangs when you walk in. He tested the clasp, weighed it, counted out bills like I was trading in a story for numbers. I put those bills in an envelope and wrote Seabrook on the front in big letters so I couldn't pretend it was for anything else. A few days later, I met Ethan at the Seabrook Shores office. He's the kind of person who knows how to make paperwork feel human, steady voice, pens that actually work. We went through the rental agreement line by line. My name went in every box that mattered. Primary renter, Eleanor Hart. Authorized cardholder, same. He explained how the smart locks worked, that once the primary code activated, subcodes could be issued for each door and for housekeeping. He highlighted the page about guest lists and said, "Just make sure you send me everyone's names for the binder. It's not about prying, it's liability and safety." I nodded like I had a whole team behind me, then walked to the coffee shop next door and filled the form on my own. I typed the names carefully, double-checking spellings the way you do when you don't want anyone to feel left out. When I slid the packet back over, Ethan said, "Do you want us to add an access addendum, just in case you need to change codes mid-stay?" I shrugged, not wanting to look dramatic, and said, "If that's standard." He smiled. "It's available to anyone who asks. I'll email it so you can e-sign." That night, I spread everything out on my kitchen table, the printed contract with my name crisp and black, the receipt with the deposit cleared, the page where I'd listed each guest. The tiny lighthouse on my keychain rattled against the stapler ting. Ting and I set it on the corner of the stack like a paperweight. I felt proud in a quiet way, the way you feel after making something with your hands. This, I told myself, is what showing up looks like. The weeks before the trip became a series of small choices. I walked past the deli case without adding the extra cheeses. I took the bus instead of ride shares. I said no to a lunch out and yes to a thermos and a bench. None of it felt like martyrdom. It felt like building something I could hand to the people I love. The final payment went through with a little lurch in my stomach, but it went through. "All set," Ethan wrote back. "We'll see you at check-in." The night before we left, I printed the guest list one more time because old habits, because paper calms me, and tucked it into a plastic sleeve. The lighthouse key caught the lamplight as if it had its own opinion. I traced the letters of my name on the first line and breathed the slow kind of breath that makes your shoulders drop. Here's the funny part, or maybe it's not funny at all. When I looked at the main cottage column, the one Caleb had insisted would be Command Central, I didn't see me there. My name was on the contract, on the receipt, on the line that said who was responsible. It just wasn't on that door. If I'm the primary, why am I not on the main cottage's list? Ruby found me on the little side porch where the paint curls at the edges like pie crust. She had that careful look kids get when they're carrying something hot. "Grandma," she said, lowering her voice even though it was just the two of us. "Can I show you something without you freaking out?" I told her I don't freak out. Not true, but it sounded like the kind of reassurance a 16-year-old could use. She slid her phone from the pocket of her oversized hoodie and opened a thread I didn't recognize. The title at the top made my tongue go dry. No Drama Week. The profile photos were all familiar. Caleb, Mia, Uncle Tom, Aunt Bree, rounded faces in little circles, the way modern life turns family into icons. She scrolled. The messages weren't evil. That would have been easier. They were practical, casual, a little smug. Transfer codes after check-in, so we don't have people wandering. Let Mom rest, she tires easy. Main cottage for adults, kids spread out. We'll sort costs later, or dispute if needed. The last line had a winking emoji that made my stomach tilt, as if the ground had dipped an inch when I wasn't looking. I could hear the ocean in the pause between us. "How long has this been going on?" I asked. Ruby shrugged in the way that's half apology, half defense. "A few weeks?" I told Dad it felt mean. He said it's just logistics. Logistics. That word gets such a good reputation for being neutral. It's amazing what people will stuff under it. Decisions about who matters, who waits, who gets the good towels, and who gets a code that never arrives. I thanked Ruby and handed the phone back, the way you hand a person their coat after an emergency, careful, like the sleeves might carry heat. She didn't move. "There's more," she said, tapping further up. "If she gets fussy, tell her the walkways are slippery. She forgets things could help if charges get weird." Caleb had written that one. Caleb, who used to bring me broken gadgets so I could lay them out on towels and fix them with a magnifying glass. I felt something in me go very still, not the kind of still that comes with resignation, the kind that comes with clarity. I told Ruby she did the right thing and that I was glad she trusted me. She nodded, eyes bright. "I don't like how they talk about you like you're a situation," she said. The word made my throat pinch. When she'd gone, I went inside and set my tote on the little kitchen table. I emptied it like a ritual. Reading glasses, a pen, a roll of tape, the folder with my contract, a small spiral notebook I keep for grocery lists and thoughts I don't want to lose. I opened to a clean page and wrote a title in big letters, Family Incident Log. Under it, I printed the date, the time, the place, Seabrook Shores, side cottage, and the first quote exactly as it appeared. "We'll sort costs later, or dispute if needed." I wrote who said it and who saw it. Then I added another line with the code talk and the one about me forgetting things. It felt strange at first, writing about my own family like I was a clerk at the counter of my life. Then it felt correct. My hands stopped shaking. The little lighthouse on my keychain tapped the tabletop ting, ting like a metronome, marking a tempo I could keep. I slid the notebook into the plastic sleeve with the contract, as if the pages wanted to live together. I took a breath that reached the back corners of my ribs. I thought about calling Caleb and telling him I'd seen his words, asking him who taught him to think of me as a lever to pull when money got tight. I thought about marching to the main cottage and demanding to be added to the list on the fridge. Instead, I sent Ruby a heart and told her I loved her for telling me the truth. And then I made tea. The kettle's click sounded louder than it should have. I remembered the question that had been circling since I arrived. If I'm the one who paid, why don't I have the code? It landed now with a new friend. If I'm the primary, why am I not in the plan? I sat with that for a long minute. Then I drew a short line under my notes and wrote a tiny checklist in the margin, the way I do before I tackle something that scares me. 3 calls. 1 paper. The calls were obvious once I let myself admit it. The bank, the property manager, someone neutral who speaks the language of boundaries better than I do. The paper was something Ethan had mentioned offhand while pointing at a clause, an addendum I hadn't thought I'd need. I closed the notebook, slid the lighthouse key through my fingers until it faced forward like a compass, and let the quiet gather around me. 3 calls. 1 paper. Do you think that's enough to flip a story like this? The tea went cold while I stared at my own handwriting. 3 calls. 1 paper, like it was a recipe I didn't quite trust yet. I picked up the phone anyway. The bank first. I'd rather scrub a kitchen grout line with a toothbrush than navigate those menus, but sometimes you clean the thing you see every day so you can live with yourself. After a few rounds of press 2 for something you don't need, a woman answered with a voice that sounded like a good coat, durable, warm. "This is Alicia in card services. How can I help?" "My name is Eleanor Hart," I said, and my voice did this steady thing it does when I've already cried in private. "I need a protection note on my account. I'm the payer of record for a vacation rental. I have reason to believe a family member might attempt to dispute legitimate charges." I gave just enough detail to be exact without turning it into a family confessional. Dates, amount, merchant name, the contract sitting right in front of me. Alicia didn't gasp or make me feel dramatic. She asked for confirming info and then said, All right, I'm adding an internal note that any dispute on these lodging transactions requires escalation to me and documentation beyond standard. I'm also flagging the account as cardholder present authorization on file. Do you have receipts and a contract you can email if needed? It my speed. Printed and scanned, I said, tapping the plastic sleeve with my knuckle. The lighthouse key chimed against the tabletop ting like it approved of the grown-up in the room. Good, she said. If anything gets weird, call and ask for me by name. Think of this like putting guardrails on a bridge you already built. Guardrails. I liked that. After we hung up, I wrote it in the margin of my log. The second call felt easier because I could picture the face on the other end. Ethan at Seabrook Shores answered with that steady property manager tone that makes you think there's a spare flashlight and a checklist for everything. I told him I'd like to schedule a morning visit to discuss access specifically, the addendum he'd mentioned about subcodes and mid-stay changes. Of course, he said. I can meet you at 9. We'll review options. The primary renter has control. We just make sure it's documented correctly. Primary renter has control. There it was in plain speech. I circled it in my notebook as if I could pin the thought down with ink. When I hung up, I watched a gull ride the wind outside the little kitchen window, like it knew where it was going and didn't feel obliged to explain. The third call wasn't really a call. It was me putting on shoes and walking to the library because I needed a different kind of help, the kind that doesn't show up on a bank statement. Vivian was at the front desk, glasses on her head like a tiny crown. I've known her just long enough to like how she listens. Some people listen like they're loading a slingshot with advice. Vivian listens like she's setting out bowls and making room. I told her about the thread I wasn't in, the lines about me forgetting things, the way the main door code had been treated like a surprise to be sprung later. I didn't give her the names because I didn't need to. She nodded in all the right places and then said, "Okay. First principle, don't argue in the hallway. Second, write it down. Third, get a neutral paper in place before feelings try to drive." "Neutral paper," I repeated. "A short, clear email," she said, already sliding a keyboard closer. "From you to your adult children, CCing yourself at a second address so it can't vanish. Tone like a weather report, not thunder. You're just confirming facts. You are the primary renter. Your card was used with your consent. Any door code changes run through you. And payment sharing will be via a formal invoice link, not at the end in a swirl of feelings. We drafted it together, sentence by sentence, until it read like a bridge with rails. No blame. No bait for a fight. Just a quiet line that said, "Here is what is true. Here is what will happen next." At the bottom, I added one last line that felt like strength without spectacle. "I'll be meeting the property manager in the morning to finalize access details." Vivian leaned back. "Now you're in what I call the 3C zone," she said. "Calm, collect, confirm. You stayed calm. You collected your documents and calls. You confirmed in writing what is real. You did not chase anybody through a house with your heart on fire." I laughed, because she was right, and because the picture was ridiculous and accurate. I emailed the note. I printed a copy for the sleeve. I even took a photo of the printed copy, in case I had to prove the printed copy existed. It felt like putting a roof on something I'd been living in without realizing the sky was leaking. On the walk back, the wind came in from the water, and the lighthouse on my keychain tapped against my thigh with each step. At the gate, I tried the intercom again just to see if effort had magic powers. It didn't, which was fine. I had my own timetable now. I sat at the little table and wrote tomorrow's plan at the top of a fresh page. 9 a.m. Ethan, access addendum. Underlined twice, not for drama, for memory. I drew a tiny box and filled it in. One box for Alicia, one for the email, one waiting for the morning. I closed the notebook like you close a good book so you can sleep. What happens at 10 o'clock tomorrow when the subcodes stop working? I was up before the gulls, the kind of awake that comes when your mind has already laid out the clothes. The air had that clean, early salt smell that makes you think in straight lines. I slipped the folder into my tote, checked that my pen worked, and touched the lighthouse on my keychain like a superstition I wasn't ready to give up. Ting. Okay then. Ethan's office sat on the edge of the property like a lighthouse of its own glass, plants that weren't quite thriving, a bulletin board with lost and found sunglasses. He greeted me with coffee and the kind of steady tone that makes people lower their shoulders. "Morning, Miss Hart. Let's review what you want to accomplish." "I want what your contract already says," I told him. "I'm the primary renter. I need the access and the control that go with that, and I want it written where no one can pretend they didn't see it." He nodded, pulled a slim folder, and slid a single-page document toward me. Access and assignment addendum. Plain words, no flair. It spelled out 3 powers in simple English. The primary renter may 1. Issue, edit, or revoke subcodes for any smart lock on the premises. 2. Reassign cottages among listed guests at any point. 3. Request security or a civil standby if staff feel unsafe during enforcement. It also added that payment sharing, if any, must go through formal invoices, no promises scribbled on a napkin at checkout. "The goal," Ethan said, tapping the first paragraph, "is clarity. This protects you and it protects us. If we need a notary, Karen's at the HOA window until noon." I read every line out loud in my head, the way I was taught to proof recipes before printing them. I asked 2 questions about timing and 1 about minors, and he answered like a person who'd been asked before. Then he handed me a pen that wrote like butter. I signed in blue ink, my name in the place where decisions live, and felt something inside me click into alignment, like a door that had always stuck but didn't. Not this morning. We walked next door to the HOA desk where Karen wore a cardigan the color of rain. She stamped and sealed and witnessed with a sweetness that made bureaucracy feel like help. When she raised her eyes over her readers and said, "All set, Miss Hart," it landed like a blessing I didn't know I needed. I tucked the notarized page behind the original contract in my sleeve and smoothed the plastic as if I were laminating my own backbone. Back at Ethan's desk, we moved to the practical part. "Let's schedule the code changes," he said. "You decide the timing. I'll program it. Subcodes for the main cottage will expire at 10 o'clock, I said, surprising myself with how fast the answer came. "But I don't want shame. I want order. We'll send a neutral notice first, for safety and liability. Door access is being consolidated under the primary renter. New codes will be issued after a brief meeting. No one's losing a vacation. We're just aligning the stay with the contract." "He's no one," Ethan typed, and the little blocks of text became calendar entries that made a kind of music I could follow. We drafted a polite message that used no adjectives and no blame, just facts and times and where to pick up the new codes. He suggested we pre-generate 3 sets, 1 for me and Ruby in the main cottage, 1 for the adults who agreed to the invoice plan in Cottage B, 1 for overflow in Cottage C. "If someone refuses to sign the acknowledgement, we don't issue a code," he said. "That way there's no gray area for staff at the desk." "Good," I said. "Gray is where feelings start driving the truck." He smiled. "I'm stealing that line. Any tames that noust." Before I left, he walked me through the audit log, how every code change left a timestamp, how names and devices linked to logins. "It's boring evidence," he said, "which is the best kind." I liked that too. Boring evidence. Guardrails and boring evidence. I could build a life with those. Outside, the wind had picked up in a way the weather app hadn't promised. I stood for a second in the bright, squinty light and let it push at my cardigan. Then I looped back by the HOA to drop a thank you note on Karen's counter because I was raised by a woman who believed in thank you notes, even when the world didn't. Back at the cottage, I set the notarized addendum on the table and placed the lighthouse keychain on top like a seal. The metal was cool from the morning. I took a photo of the page, emailed it to myself, and to the address I use when I want a copy that no one can accidentally delete. Then I sat and wrote a short script in my notebook for later, in case my voice tried to detour into apology. I'm the primary renter. For everyone's safety and clarity, access runs through me. Here are your options, and here is the invoice link. It didn't feel vengeful. It felt like buckling my own seatbelt. At 9:47, my phone pinged. Code schedule confirmed. New access packet ready at 9:55. I exhaled like I'd been holding it for a month. I thought about all the times I'd bought quiet with my wallet and called it love. Then I thought about Ruby's face when she handed me the truth, and I felt the oddest mixture of grief and relief, like leaving a church you no longer believe in but still thanking the light that got you there. I wasn't canceling their trip. I was assigning who actually got to stay. At 9:57, the wind shifted like the whole street had exhaled. I watched the seconds on my phone tick in clean little jumps while the access packet sat in my tote like a sleeping animal, new codes, acknowledgement sheets, the invoice link printed twice. I sent the neutral notice Ethan and I drafted, consolidation of door access under the primary renter, brief meeting in the courtyard at 10:15, new codes issued afterward. No adjectives, no apologies. The lighthouse key tapped my mug, ting, and I told myself that sound meant, hold the line. At 10, nothing dramatic happened. No sirens, no gasp from the sky. The quiet just got a different flavor. Somewhere across the courtyard, a door tried and failed, with a cheerful little denial beep, and a second later Mia called out, "Is anyone's code acting weird?" Another beep, then the hollow laughter people use when they're performing ease. From my side table I could see her through the hedge, jiggling the handle like the lock owed her a favor. Caleb dialed me before I could decide whether to answer. "Mom, quick thing," he said, voice in that tight register that pretends to be casual. "Looks like the system glitched. Everyone's locked out of the main. Can you buzz over to the office and ask them to reset? We've got perishable stuff." "It's not a glitch," I said. "Access is consolidated under the primary renter for safety and clarity. Check your text. We'll meet at 10:15. A silence, then the small click of his tongue when a plan has met friction. "We don't need a meeting," he said. "Just swing by and fix the codes. We'll handle costs later, like we always do." "We won't," I said, steady. "There's an invoice link now." He exhaled into the phone like a balloon losing shape. "Mom, 10:15, I repeated, and hung up gently the way you set down a dish you know will chip if you pretend it's not fragile. By 10:05, the courtyard had acquired texture. Doors tried, handles rattled, someone shook a beach towel a little too hard. Aunt Bree laughed, a sharp little laugh, and said, "You'd think we broke into Fort Knox," and Mia said louder, "I'll just talk to the desk." She marched toward the property office and came back with Ethan trailing a yard behind her like a shadow assigned by the sun. He carried a folder. She carried her indignation like it had a handle. "Miss Hart," Ethan said to me first, and I appreciated that, the way he kept the ground level. "We're on schedule." Mia spun toward me. "What is this?" she asked, smile tight. "Nobody told me we were doing authoritarian vacation rules." "It's not authoritarian," I said. "It's contractual. New codes after we agree on assignments and payment. 15 minutes. Caleb arrived then, sunglasses propped like a headband. He did the host voice. "Okay, everyone, little hiccup. Mom's just standardizing access. Grab a drink, we'll regroup." Underneath the cheer, I could see the math running in his eyes, the way panic multiplies when money is involved. Ruby slid to my side with her book like we were just two people enjoying a sunny day. She whispered, "You good?" I squeezed her hand once. The lighthouse key chimed, a small, steady sound. My phone buzzed an email this time. The subject made my scalp prickle. Dispute draft. For 1 second, my heart did the old thing assume the worst and swallow it. Then I saw the sender, a generic auto-forward from the shared family printer account. Attached, a PDF of a draft cardholder dispute lodging created this morning at 9:41, listing the Seabrook charges with a helpful, dishonest checkbox marked unauthorized, not recognized. In the header, the source machine listed the office suite number of Caleb's startup, the IP address like a row of little truth stones. I didn't have to be an IT person to read the letters. I heard my own voice before I felt ready for it. "Just curious," I said to the air between us, as if I were commenting on the weather. "If someone filed a dispute on lodging charges that the cardholder authorized and signed for, do you know what happens?" Aunt Bree blinked. "The bank just reverses it?" "No," I said. "The bank asks for documentation." I brought mine. I patted the folder, not like a threat, more like a reminder to myself that I hadn't imagined any of this. Mia crossed her arms. Who would even do that? Caleb's phone buzzed in his pocket. He glanced at it reflexively, then away too fast. The way guilt telegraphs itself is so ordinary. A breath, a blink, a flush. I didn't press. That was the old pattern: poke, plead, get spun. I just let the quiet sit down with us, took one step out of the way of my old self, and watched the pieces line up on their own. Ethan checked his watch in a neutral, service way. The wind flipped the page on my notebook to the line where I'd written guardrails. We were 5 minutes from the little gathering I'd requested, just enough time for people to decide whether they planned to be adults that day. The lighthouse key tapped the spine of my folder. Ting. And I thought, boring evidence and breath. That's all we need right now. Who? I wondered as I slid the email into the sleeve behind the notarized addendum. Prints a dispute draft from their company office and thinks it won't leave a trail. I locked myself in the side cottage bathroom because it was the only room in the whole compound that felt like it belonged to me. The tile was cold under my bare feet, and the mirror had that slight sea haze that softens everything, like someone had turned down the sharpness on my life for a minute. I braced my hands on the sink and watched my own mouth try out the sentence I never really use. No. It looked smaller than I expected. I tried again. No. This time it sounded like a word people might hear. I don't know when being agreeable became my superstition. Somewhere between packing extra snacks for away games and paying surprise dentist bills, I built a private rule. If I keep everyone else comfortable, I'll be allowed to exist. It's an ugly math when you say it out loud. In my head, it always wore nicer clothes, helpful, generous, easy. But standing there with ocean-warm air in my lungs and the taste of someone else's plan on my tongue, I saw it plain. I have been purchasing invitations with my silence. I sat on the edge of the tub and pulled my notebook onto my knees. The lighthouse on my keychain pressed a cold crescent into my palm while I wrote a title in block letters. Things I no longer fund. Under it, 3 lines came fast, as if they'd been lining up for years, waiting for me to open the door. No wires, no cash, no temporary loans. I underlined each one once, not because ink makes anything safer, but because my hand needed to feel the drag of the pen. In the corner, I added a tiny 4th line, almost shy, no guilt discounts. And still, old habits don't leave without making a scene. My mind sent a little parade of arguments. What if the kids need something truly urgent? What if this ruins everything? What if saying no means you eat alone for the rest of your life? I let them march by like floats I didn't have to applaud. A different voice, quieter, steadier, asked better questions. The ones Vivian would ask, the ones I wish I'd learned years ago. If you sign anything today, what exactly are you agreeing to? Who pays if later never comes? What's the worst thing that happens if you pause? Who benefits from your confusion? Who is the payer of record on paper, not in feelings? Can you get a neutral copy with names and dates? Will this still be true tomorrow morning when nobody's embarrassed? I wrote those down too, even though they weren't for signing anything today. They were for signing myself. I read them back to myself like a call and response. My breathing changed on its own, that deep, back rib kind of breath you don't get when you're busy performing. I drew a small square next to each question and filled them in. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like a woman making a scene. I felt like a woman making a policy. I took the keychain off my belt loop and laid it in my palm. It's ridiculous, the weight such a tiny thing can carry. House key, mailbox key, the key to my old storage unit I keep meaning to close, the grocery cart token from before the store stopped using them. I thumbed each one, deciding what actually opens something that matters. The storage key went into the junk drawer, the cart token into the glass jar with the stray buttons. The lighthouse stayed. I clipped the ring back on and felt the weight shift from jangly to clean. There was a knock then, polite, practiced. The kind of knock that belongs to people who have told themselves they're reasonable. I didn't answer right away. I wrote one more sentence in the notebook, slow and neat so I couldn't misunderstand it later. I will not negotiate while being managed. The knock came again, sharper. Mom? Caleb's voice through the wood. 2 minutes? We just need to coordinate rooms. I looked at my face in the mirror. It looked like me. Plus a woman who had found the spine of her own book. I stood and smoothed my shirt and picked up the notebook and the folder and the pen that writes like butter. I touched the lighthouse ting, and it didn't feel like a talisman anymore. It felt like a tool. Before I opened the door, I rehearsed the sentence one last time, the way you rehearse grace before a meal. Short, true, mine. Then I turned the knob and stepped into the narrow hall that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and salt, and I thought, kindly and without drama, I know exactly what I'll say when they ask for the keys. We met in the courtyard at 10:15 like adults who'd promised themselves not to make a scene. The sun sat clean and high. The hydrangeas did their loud work of being beautiful. Ethan stood a step back with a folder under his arm, and Deputy Carla lingered near the gate with the kind of quiet that makes people behave. I set my notebook and the clear sleeve on the picnic table and placed my lighthouse keychain between us like a neutral witness. I'll go first, I said, because somebody had to. I'm the primary renter. My card paid the deposit and the balance. I've confirmed with the bank that the charges are authorized and documented. Here, I tapped the sleeve, are the contract, the notarized access addendum, and a brief incident log. Mia smiled, the kind of smile that wobbles. We didn't come here for paperwork, she said. We didn't, I agreed. But paperwork is how we keep the vacation from turning into court. That got a small, involuntary laugh from Bree and a throat clear from Caleb. I kept my voice steady and short, the way Vivian trained me. Here's what happens next. Option A. You stay. We assign cottages today, and adults who wish to remain sign an acknowledgement and pay their share through the invoice link. You receive fresh codes once that's done. Option B. You check out of the compound by noon and book elsewhere. Minors stay with any adult who signs and agrees to the plan. No one's stranded. No one's shamed. We're just aligning with what's already on paper. Caleb tried the charming shrug. Mom, you're making this big. I'm making it clear, I said. Clarity is kinder than guessing. Mia folded her arms. We've always settled up at the end. And at the end, I said, feelings sprint faster than numbers. This time we do numbers first. I'm due active minus past. Ethan slid the top page from his folder, so the heading showed Access and Assignment, Addendum Acknowledgement. This is standard, he said to the group. We use it any time a primary renter centralizes codes mid-stay. It protects staff and guests. If you'd like me to walk you through it, I can. Bree leaned in. What if someone doesn't sign? Then we don't issue a code, Ethan said evenly. You're welcome to enjoy the common areas until noon, and we'll help you with recommendations for other rentals. Caleb glanced at Mia, then back at me. We're not refusing to pay, he said. We just don't want to be managed. I don't want to manage you, I said. I want to stop being managed. He want now Zaveri. The sentence landed like a little bell, true, not loud. Deputy Carla shifted her weight, comfortable, watchful. No one was in trouble. We were simply drawing the lines on a map everyone could see. I opened the notebook and read 4 facts without commentary. The dates and amounts, that the primary renter field listed my name, that the bank placed a protection note, that the group thread included a suggestion to dispute if needed. I did not look at Caleb when I read the last part. I let the words do their own work. Ruby sat on the bench beside me, her knee pressed lightly to my thigh like the world's smallest brace. Bree cleared her throat again, less performative this time. Okay, she said. What's the share, and where do I sign? Ethan handed her a pen and the acknowledgement, and the sound of ink on paper was more calming than any of us deserved. Mia stepped forward then, chin tilted. Before we sign anything, she said, I want to point out something off about the guest list. She pulled a printout, smooth as a presentation. This version doesn't show your name on the main cottage, Ellie. That means the central codes shouldn't be yours to control. I slid my copy of the original list across the table, the one Ethan and I had reviewed on day 1. My name sat there in crisp black under primary, and again under access, all. Guest lists are audited, Ethan said gently. We keep change logs. Mia blinked at him, then at the paper, then back at me. Well, she said, aiming for breezy and landing on brittle. Maybe the office mixed something up. It happens, I said. That's why we write things down. Caleb picked up the acknowledgement and stared like it was a test he hadn't studied for. What if we need more time? He asked. You've had weeks, I said, and softened it with, Take 15 minutes. If you choose option B, Ethan will help you pack out and find alternatives. Kids can stay with me or any signing adult. He's neither. He opened his mouth to argue, then closed it, eyes briefly flicking toward the cottages, like he could see the clock ticking behind the siding. Bree signed. Tom signed. The world didn't tilt. It steadied. I slid the invoice link across the table. Once payment posts, you'll get your new code by text, I said. No cash. Mia kept her printout raised like a shield. I'm telling you, there's a discrepancy. And I'm telling you, Ethan said, tapping his tablet, the audit log will show who edited what and when. For a second, the air changed, the way a room does before a thunderclap you can feel in your bones. I watched Mia's fingers tighten on the page, watched Caleb not look at his phone. I didn't push. I placed my lighthouse key back on the table and let it sit between us like a simple fact. If there's a discrepancy, the log will tell us who touched it. Ruby was the one who broke the spell, not with drama, just with competence. She slid into the seat Ethan had vacated and opened her phone like a clerk clocking in. "Grandma," she said softly, "do you want me to forward the header?" She didn't say which one. She didn't have to. Caleb shifted. "What header?" "The dispute draft that magically emailed itself," Ruby said, eyes on the screen. "Attachments leave footprints. Here." She flicked, and a printout slid across the table, the forwarded email from the family printer account, metadata stacked like tidy bricks. Created 941A. M. Source, Heartworks Office Suite 204. User, Caleb, H. The checkbox, unauthorized, not recognized, sat there as dumb and obvious as a lie told to a mirror. Caleb laughed the way people do when they hope you'll agree to pretend. "This is ridiculous," he said. "I was just exploring options in case there were fraudulent charges. Due diligence." "You don't label your mother's charges unauthorized as practice," I said. "And you don't do due diligence from your company IP unless you want to invite auditors to Thanksgiving." "What is sad?" He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Mia pivoted in toward him, whispering fast, then pivoted back out toward me. "This is getting blown out of proportion," she said. "The important thing is we're a family. We can settle this after lunch." "No," I said, gently enough to hear the yes inside it for myself. "We settle it before the doors open." Ethan laid two forms side by side. Steady hands, steady voice. "Acknowledgement and invoice authorization," he said. "Sign both. Codes go out." Bree's pen scratched. Tom's followed. A little row of grown-up choices formed right there in the salt air. Caleb stared at his copy like it might turn into something friendlier if he held it long enough. "I didn't mean," he started. "I know," I said, "because intent and impact are different countries, and the impact is we're not doing it your way." I turned the folder so he could see the notarized addendum again and then left it alone. "You can over-explain a boundary until it looks like a suggestion," he signed. The relief that ran across his face looked a lot like gravity relinquishing a hold. Mia didn't move. She held her printout like a passport she wasn't ready to surrender. Ethan didn't hurry her. Deputy Carla looked at a gull. The world kept not ending. I picked up the lighthouse keychain and felt its edges, the tiny ridges where the paint had worn smooth. "Ruby," I said, and she looked up like she'd been listening for her name the whole time. I unclipped the ring and slid off a spare, pressed it into her palm. "Main cottage," I told her. "You and me for now." Her grin flashed and then settled into something steadier. "Thanks," she said, tucking it into her pocket with the kind of care that isn't performative. It felt right in a simple, vertebra-by-vertebra way trust, traveling forward a generation like a note slipped into a pocket. Mia made a small sound, a tight intake of breath that could have been hurt or pride or both. "So that's it?" she said. "We're banished unless we sign your little forms?" "Nobody's banished," I said. "You have two options I described, both with doors that open. You choose which one you need today." "And if we need time?" she persisted. "You have until noon," Ethan said, kind as weather. "We'll help either way." Caleb glanced at her. "Mia," he said. Something like plea threaded through my name on his tongue. She didn't look at him. She looked at me, the way competitors look across a net. Fine, she said finally, each letter cut clean. She signed, a single stroke, no flourish. But there's still that list discrepancy. We have the audit log, Ethan said. It'll show who changed what and when. That's danger. Great, Mia said, too quickly. She handed the sheet back with a smile that didn't reach any useful muscle. Then we'll all be reassured. Ethan tapped the tablet, a little progress bar in his eyes. He nodded once. Got it. He didn't read it out loud. He didn't have to yet. The information took its seat at the table like a guest who'd finally arrived. My phone buzzed. Payment received. New code issued. Another buzz for Bree. Another for Tom. The relief on their faces looked like people putting down bags they'd been pretending weren't heavy. I exhaled and felt my own shoulders drop, one vertebra at a time. Here's how we'll assign, I said. Back to the practical, back to the life raft of logistics done right. Ruby and I in the main, Bree and Tom in B, Caleb and Mia in C. Kids split by sleep needs, not adult comfort. Mia's jaw worked, then unclenched. Whatever, she said, but softer, which is the first cousin of cooperation. We gathered our copies. I tucked the forwarded header behind the notarized page and the acknowledgement stack. The lighthouse keychain felt lighter with one key gone, not because I'd lost anything, but because something had finally been shared correctly. I looked at the original guest list, my version, the one with my name where it belonged, and then at Mia's printout, the one that had tried to make me an afterthought at my own table. The question rose in me, not like a weapon, but like a curiosity that deserved an answer. If you didn't mastermind the dispute, why does the guest list that erases me have your fingerprints? Ethan didn't read the audit log out loud. He angled the tablet toward Mia like a doctor showing a shadow on an X-ray and let her take it in at her own speed. Her face did a small, complicated thing. Defiance, then understanding, then that tight swallow pride makes when it realizes it's been caught doing a job it can't explain. The list didn't edit itself, he said, still gentle. It shows a login from your email, Mia. Yesterday afternoon. Main cottage. Guest access. Ellie removed. She stared at the hydrangeas instead of the screen. It was a mistake, she said finally, but the sentence didn't have a place to land. It might have started as one, I said, but it grew teeth. She set the tablet down and smoothed the printout like she could iron the truth out of it. You think I'm some cartoon villain, she said, and for the first time her voice had a crack in it that sounded human. I wanted my mother to see we had it together, okay? She's coming up for dinner tomorrow and she never thinks anything I do is enough unless it looks polished. The main cottage is the picture. I panicked. I was trying to avoid a scene. By making me invisible? I asked, not unkindly. That's a scene too. Just a quieter one. She flinched at that, which told me she heard it. Caleb scrubbed a hand over his face like he wanted to erase his last 24 hours. I shouldn't have drafted that dispute, he said, and the admission came out like a gravel road he was finally willing to walk. Cash flow is tight. Investors are jumpy. I told myself it was just prudent to see what the form looked like. He's 10% wrote him. And then you checked unauthorized, Ruby said from beside me. Not mean, just factual. He nodded, shame loosening his jaw enough to let honesty through. I'm sorry, Mom. I believed the sorry and still didn't trust the pattern. Both things could be true at once. Thank you, I said. And no, he blinked. No to returning to a system where I pay first and get told to rest while you rearrange me. I tapped the sleeve contract addendum, log. We're going to make this official so feelings don't get to edit the facts again. Ethan slid a new page forward. We can add a short non-interference agreement, he said. It's very simple. For everyone's comfort and safety, communication about access, payment, and assignments goes through the primary renter or the office for a set period. Violations mean codes are paused until we reconvene. We can pair it with a cooling-off window. Mia bristled. So, now I need permission to speak? You need a pause before you make it my job to manage your anxiety, I said. 90 days. Email only for the logistics stuff. No side doors, no kitchen whispers. If you need something, write it down like an adult and copy me where I live on paper. Deputy Carla looked almost relieved. That right there solves more neighbor problems than you'd think. He was a little. Fine, Mia said. Chin up, then down, then level. 90 days. Email. Caleb nodded. I'll sign it. Good, I said. And one more thing. Assignments stand. Bree and Tom in B, you two in C. If Lorraine needs to be impressed, she can be impressed by adults who sign what they owe and show up to dinner on time with actual kindness. Mia's mouth wobbled again. She doesn't do impressed by kindness, she said, and the sentence sounded like a confession you make to a priest you aren't sure you believe in anymore. Then she can be unimpressed outside, I said, and it surprised me how much I meant it. No one gets to use my house key to stage their reputation. We signed. It wasn't ceremonial. Pens clicked. Paper slid. Ethan stamped. Codes pinged to phones like little trills of sanity. Bree handed out popsicles from a cooler someone finally opened, and for one absurd second we looked like a normal family in a postcard. Sun, sugar, a child laughing at melted red on his wrist. Mia lingered. I'm not a monster, she said to me under her breath, eyes shiny in a way she didn't want. I thought if I just curated the week, no one would see the cracks. I don't think you're a monster, I said. I think you're tired of having to be impressive in order to be safe. I know that flavor. It makes people do math that hurts other people. She swallowed. Your line about being managed, was that about me? It was about all of you, I said, and me for letting it happen. She nodded once, a small, honest dip of the chin. Okay. Ruby looped her arm through mine, a casual anchoring. Ethan handed me the finalized packet, a sandwich of agreements and acknowledgments with my name in the places where choices live. The lighthouse keychain lay on the table beside it, paint worn at the edges like something useful, not decorative. I clipped it back to my belt loop and felt the weight settle in exactly the right place. Lighter than before, somehow. Maybe because I wasn't carrying everyone else's keys. We spent the afternoon like people who had chosen their rooms on purpose. Bree and Tom made a grocery run and came back with actual vegetables. Caleb fixed the broken hinge on the side gate like penance you can hold in your hand. Mia texted me a screenshot of her email to Lorraine. Dinner is low-key, backyard. Bring a sweater. We're keeping it kind, not curated. I surprised myself by texting back a thumbs up, and then, because I'm still me, a reminder about bug spray. When the sun leaned west, Ruby and I sat on the main cottage steps with our sandals off, letting the boards warm the bottoms of our feet. You okay, Grandma? She asked. I'm better than okay, I said. I'm aligned. In its Dale, she grinned. That sounds like yoga. It sounds like finally reading the instructions on my own life, I said. The breeze lifted and I could hear the bell on the harbor buoy, that hollow, hopeful sound I've loved since before I knew why. I thumbed the little lighthouse, and it clicked against my ring, a soft, ordinary music. I thought of all the years I'd tried to trade money for belonging, how I'd called it generosity when some of it was fear. I thought of how good a clean no can be when it isn't a door slammed in anger but a gate that swings on well-oiled hinges. We cleared the dishes from a dinner that didn't try to impress anybody. Bree told a story that made Tom laugh so hard he choked and then apologized to no one. Caleb stacked his plates like a man learning where the sink lives. Mia handed me a pack of sticky notes. For your log, she said. If you want them. Thank you, I said, and meant it without turning it into a treaty. Later, when the cottages had gone soft and the day had put its hands down, I walked to the seawall and hooked the lighthouse keychain over a piece of driftwood while I watched the last light move off the water. It looked small out there, but true. I left it there for a minute like a prayer you trust enough not to babysit, then put it back where it belonged. Here's the thing I didn't expect. Peace is noisy when it first arrives. It rattles every old cupboard so you can hear what's in there. It knocked around inside of me until the shelves stopped shaking, and then it settled, like flour after someone bumps the counter. When it did, I could hear something even quieter underneath space, room to be a grandmother without having to apologize for existing. We'll have other tests. Of course we will. Families are long games. There's already a text pinging for tomorrow. Dinner plan. Lorraine wants to talk paperwork, followed by a winky face that doesn't make me laugh. Maybe there's a new script they'll try. Maybe someone will show up with a form that says power of attorney and call it love. That's fine. I know what I'll bring to the table, and I know exactly where I'll set my keys. Here's the truth this story circled toward. Belonging you have to buy isn't belonging. Or, as Ellie learned, I won't buy my place at a table that keeps asking me to disappear. Ron Jerry Kong Fai Buk Tuong, Nola Kankua Chima Kiban Dang Ko Mat. And clarity on paper, in your voice, is kinder than guessing. How to use this tomorrow morning. Start small, steady, legal. Write your minimum boundary in 3 short lines. For example, no wires, no cash, no temporary loans. And keep it in your wallet. Do the 3. C. Calm. Collect. Confirm. Breathe. Gather receipts, emails, dates. Send a neutral note that states facts and next steps. Before you sign or help, ask the 7 questions. Who pays if later never comes? Who's the payer of record? Can I get a neutral copy? Can this wait until tomorrow? Start a family incident log. Date, time, who, exact quote, screenshot, photo, next step. 1 page today. If things escalate, route logistics through a neutral channel, bank representative, property manager, community center, or a trusted friend, rather than hallway arguments. Let the motif stay with you, that little lighthouse key. Each time your keys tap ting, remember to steer by paperwork, not panic. Forgive yourself for old patterns. Many of us confuse generosity with permission. Forgive others without handing back the keys. Clarity is kinder than guessing. If this resonates, share 1 sentence you'll tell yourself on a weekday in the comments. And grab the free 1-page Family Incident Log plus 3C and 7 questions checklist in the description. Subscribe if you want more calm, backbone-first stories and tools. This is not legal advice. Seek professional help when needed. Wishing you a quiet night and a boundary you chose.